I'm going to do an insight video today. Again, these insights come from nowhere. They can be one moment I'm just sitting there and I'm just walking, or I'm just just be. It's all about being. When you're in a state of being, you start to really sort of link in with spirit and link in with your guidance, but also link in with your infinite self and your higher self. And today, the sort of like the conversation, I was at the gym this morning, I was running on the treadmill, and this sort of like conversation around separation started to come in today, and it's all sort of like links into obviously 3D blueprint, 5D blueprint, but it was even going further than that. It was discussing in a sense that it was the universal law of oneness. Separation occurs when we come down on the planet for like a short space of time, when we incarnate, and then we start. The whole purpose of the journey is to realign and awaken again, and remember that you're a spiritual being of co-creation. You're a being of light of energy, and you're born of the source energy, and you carry that seed within yourself, within your energy, within your consciousness. And so the conversation was sort of like going along those kind of lines, and it was looking at separation, and what was really occurring was the universal law of oneness is never separate, and everything is vibration, everything is frequency, everything is energy. And the conversation was like, because it was going on like a dialogue in my head. I was having like this conversation was going on in my head as I was sitting there and I was running on the treadmill, which is how it happens. You have this kind of conversation, and it's this kind of conversation about the spirit world, about spiritual reality, and it was just talking about source energy. It was just talking about the universal law of oneness, that there is no separation. And whatever your experience of reality is your experience, and it's created through free will and choice, so that in theory there's no right or wrongs, and in that sense that's where the conversation was going. I don't like to start getting into deeper conversations where there's things that happen to people that are traumatic, and I would never sort of like would ever say that there's no rights or wrongs, or what happened to somebody wasn't wrong. I'd never sort of like say that. But we're talking like in a more sort of like physical 3D reality, not trying to talk about trauma, not trying to talk about things like that, but just talking about choices and things that we do. And it was just talking about like consciousness, and in this state of consciousness, or this ever-evolving sort of vibration, the universal law of vibration, creation occurs, and it occurs on many different sort of like frequencies and many different levels of consciousness. And at the end of the day, they're all part of the universal law of oneness. So there is, in that sense, there's nothing right or wrong. There's only your own perspective and your own experience, and that is your journey. That is what you're creating. So this is part of the universal law of oneness. And again, it was discussing things like there's no higher, there's no lower, because everything is one. There's no sense of separation. The separation is where we start to sort of label things, and we start to dilute them, and we start to look at them in a way that like if I need to go and get this new promotion, and that it's all those kind of things are sort of like we attach to something, and that's still part of the universal law of oneness, but it's just a different frequency. Like one frequency where you're more harmonized with spirit, and you're more open to your spirit and your inner guidance and your intuition is part of the universal law of oneness, but it's a more open sort of experience, and like the other one's more limited. And that's not saying one's better than the other, because they're part of the whole, they're part of the same frequency. And this is what spirit were trying to tell me this morning. They were trying to tell me that I think we all get caught up in what's good and bad, and what's right and wrong, and what's higher and lower, and all this. And the sense I got, it was what we don't see it like that. We don't see energy, we don't see light like that. We just see it's part of a whole. It's part of the universal vibration, and there isn't higher or lower, there isn't good or bad, there just is. And this is what they were saying today, and this is what I was getting when I was sitting there and I was connecting into it. And although I've had many conversations and dialogues in my head around this kind of stuff, where I connect into my higher infinite being, and we've had these conversations many times before, or I feel like the flow of the universe, and it's all flow. It is all flow. It's all like the vibration and the frequency. It is part of the same vibration. It's a oneness vibration. And so we get caught up in the human form about what's right and wrong and what's good or bad or what's higher and lower. And spirit are not interested. They don't see reality like that. You know, they just don't see that they're separate, and they don't see that you're separate, and they don't see that, Joe Bloggs that lives next to you is any different. They're part of the whole, and everything is part of that same source. So this is the difference again. This is that shift, from like when you're a spiritual being of light and energy, you have an understanding that everything is one. Everything is one. There's no separation. There's no up or down. There's no right or left. There just is. And they don't get caught up in that kind of thing. It's only in the human form that we get caught up in that. What's right, what's good, what's bad. And also in that sense, it's like, everything's just a different sort of, a different frequency or a different reflection of that oneness energy. And where you are and where you sort of like end up in your reality is to do with how you see that and how you experience it. So this is why everybody's journey is just as worthwhile, and it's just as relevant as everybody else's, because it's all part of the same source energy, that we're all part of this oneness vibration. And this is where this connects into. Again, it was about just being open. So I was running along the treadmill, and I was having this good dialogue in my head, with my higher self, or my infinite self, or the source energy, or whatever you want to call it. And then it was like it shifted. Then now it's about being. So that the next step is being, and just trying to remain in that energy, in that light, and not being attached to things, and not being attached to what's right or wrong. And you just need to be, and that is the state of oneness. Being. It's not doing, it's being. We're always doing. And this was the conversation that was going on today. And I just think it's separation, and I felt like this very strongly from many years as a spiritual being, that I have always not liked labels to things. I've not liked people to label something, because I think it limits it, it dilutes it, it takes that power away from what it is. If you experience it fully as it is, then it's infinite. If you label it and separate it, it becomes limited. And this is the kind of conversation I was having with the guides and the masters, and the, as they were linking into my energy this morning. And I just think it's a really, really good thing. 3 colours I've seen today. I just had a bath, and I was sat in there I had like orange, green and blue in my head, and like orange is very much around compassion. And I think that's a good tool. That's a good sort of like value to have for the day. That person or that reflection or whatever you see, and that you look at that person and you don't like them, or you don't like what the choices they've made, they're still part of the whole. They're still part of that universal oneness, that oneness vibration, and that's their choice, and that's how they're choosing to live. It's still part of the whole. That might not be how you're choosing it, but you're not them. You're not expressing your light. You're not expressing your energy in the way they are. But they're still part of the same whole. And this is how spirit looks at it. This is how spirit sees it. They don't see a separation. They just see an infinite source and an infinite light. We're all one. We are all one vibration. And we realise that. And this is what this time's about. And that's the only way that you really truly unify, and you shift and create and also heal the planet, is by realigning with that consciousness that we're all one. We're not separate. But that means like trees, that means animals, that means flowers, that means everything. Everything is part of the same source energy. It's a oneness vibration. There is nothing separate. And when you start to link into that, then you start to see the power in that. The power that there's no right or wrong. So you can't make mistakes. You make choices, but then you expand and grow from them. But you don't make mistakes, because it's still part of the whole. You're never separate. But also it goes further, because there's also that sense of you're always supported. You're always aligned. You're always sort of in sync in some way. And it's about trusting. It's about trusting and knowing. I think as you become more spiritual, you get a knowing. And you feel something and you go with it and you trust it and you know it makes sense because it resonates with you. And that's where you're starting to connect into that oneness vibration, that oneness frequency. And that's what this sort of like time's about. There is no right and wrong. There's lots of things going on, you know. They're just a different frequency, but they're still part of the whole. So everything that's happening is part of the whole. And it's a reflection of that. And at the end of the day, each of us as spiritual beings has the ability to be part of that oneness vibration, but also to express our light and our energy. And we have a choice, we have free will how we express that. We're not limited, we're not powerless, we're powerful and we're infinite. And this is what this time's about. So don't forget that, there is no separation. You're always connected, you're always aligned, you can't be anything else but the light and energy that you are. You're an infinite being of light energy. So you can't be anything else than that. And it's also this, they were also sort of like talking about separation, and they were talking about, that so many of us are searching, or so many of us are looking for something. We've always had it. It's always been here. And it's not, I'm not going to go for the old cliche that we're all searching and we're searching in the wrong place. I don't mean it like that. I just mean that we've always had it. We've always been it. We were born it, and it's not something that we can't be, because we will become it, because that's what our purpose is to open up and expand and become that. So whether we do it in this lifetime or we do it in the next lifetime, we will become it, because that is our source, that is our essence. You can't not be something that you are, and we're all part of that same source energy. And whatever goes on with whatever actions have been said, whatever actions have been done, and whatever sort of like things people have done, they are still born of that source energy, and they're all still born of that part of that infinite oneness vibration. So nothing's separate. And this was the conversation that was going on with me today, and going on with as I was sitting there. And I think it's a really interesting one, because alongst that, we see that everything and everyone and everywhere is part of the same sort of energy of this oneness vibration. We can start to not become attached. We can start to let go, and not to really sort of judge, and not to really, look at other people and make decisions. And it just brings a sense of balance and harmony to me, that we're not, there's nothing we have to be, there's nothing we have to do. We're already it. We're already part of it. We've never been separate. The separation is the illusion that we sort of like as spiritual beings, or as physical beings, when we come down and we go dormant, but we're not dormant. We're still connected, and we always have been. But it's also interesting how spirits see it, that there's just everything is one. There's no separation. So in that sense, there is no right and wrong. So all this energy and this light that we waste on judging each other and judging these things, and looking at the news and looking at everything else going on, and making those decisions, that's again an illusion. And again, this is part of the 3D reality. So the main sort of focus of the conversation, or the insight today, is there's no separation. We're all part of the same source. There's no right or wrong. There's no up or down. There's no left and right. There's no higher or lower. There just is. So in that sense, go out and create your life. Go out and be who you want to be. Express who you want to be. And if something comes up and you want to give yourself a hard time about it, remember it. There's no right or wrongs. There's no up and down. There's no left and right. And there's no higher or lower. There just is. And that's how spirits see you. So know that you're never alone. That you're never disconnected. You're never, that sense of you're never alone is so important. Because I think so many people feel alone at times. And you're not. You're this source energy that can never die, that is part of a whole. And these spiritual angels and guides and ascended masters know this. And that's why you are so sort of like that. Each of us has this spark, this energy, this creative energy. We're all so unique because we're all born of this, this light, this energy, and we're always connected to it. And this is why spirit never give up. This is why they never stop serving. This is why they never stop communicating. This is why they never stop they never judge, because they know that you are me and I am you. In that sense, we're all part of the same energy, and we're all part of a whole. There is nothing separate. So each person or each being is of infinite value as the next being. There is no separation. There is no better or worse. It's just a human concept. And this is what Spirit was saying to me today. And this is why they were talking about the universal law of oneness. And this is why it's the, everybody talks about the universal law of oneness, but it's like the fundamental of being spiritual is that universal law, knowing. And vibration, this is why vibration's important. And frequency links into it, because it's very much around that. It's very much around that state of consciousness. But frequency is, it just changes. And this is what universal law of transmutation and transformation is. Vibration and frequency, depending on your consciousness, depending on your light that you're expressing, shifts reality, and it shifts sort of, and it transforms. But it transforms to give you more insight, more understanding, more knowledge, more awareness, and then you start to use your energy in that way. But again, the master knows, like a spiritual master, it doesn't see itself as an energy being that's more important than anything else. It knows it's part of a whole. And this is why it's so important. And that's how we start to really overcome so much on this planet, is remembering that. Remembering that we're all part of the same and that there is no separation. So that's the insight for today.